What's up, Captain Coder here? I thought I would check out Clash of Codes. So there's a website called Code and Game. It's kind of like Leak Code, Hacker Inc. Can come here. You can practice your programming skills. But one of the things I love about this site is they have something called Clash of Code. These short little coding battles where they usually have some relatively easy coding problems. And I think you have like 10, 15 minutes to try and complete it. So I thought I'd pop in, do a Clash of Code, see if I can get it done, see how fast I can get it done, and then go over my solution with you guys. All right, so here we go. Starting in a moment here. Shortest mode, you have to pass maximum or test with the lowest code size. So I'm not a huge fan of the lowest code size ones. They want you to write a program that has like the shortest possible code. And I'm gonna make my screen a little bigger here. Cover my face up a little bit, but that's okay. All right, so you are given two numbers, x and n. You should output, I believe it's saying x factorial divided by x minus n factorial. Okay, so I have a program coming in where I'm reading in an x, I'm reading in an n, and I'm computing this value here. So let's see if we can get factorial. And I'm going to go ahead and use C#, so my code size is going to be a little bigger than I want it to be no matter what. I'm just going to worry about getting in a nice solution. All right, so to compute factorial, that is a number multiplied by itself minus 1 all the way down to get to 1. So if x is 5, I should do 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1 technically, but I think we can kind of omit that. And then I would also do, so the ultimate thing I want to do here is something like this. And then x minus n factorial, so if n was, 3, I'd have 2. So x minus n, 5 minus 3 is 2, divided by 2. If n was 2, I'd do 5 minus 2. I'd get 3 times 2. And then I need to display that in the console. All right, so now that we've talked about the problem itself, let's see if we can go ahead and solve this problem. So I'm going to need a loop here. I don't think that there's a factorial built into C#, so this is why the shortest code, it doesn't bother me too much if I'm using C#. Shortest code in a different programming language might be a little bit more competitive. C# tends to be a little bit more robust. Robust, not a word. Verbose, a little bit verbose. Let me see if I can move my face over there. Okay, you can see me a little bit better now. All right, the font might be a little bit small on this, so I apologize. See if I can make it a little bigger. Nah, that just makes the interface harder to see. Okay, so we're gonna come in here. I need to do a loop essentially that lets me get 5 times x minus 1 times x minus 2. The order doesn't actually matter on that. I can do 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 because of the mathematical property there. It doesn't matter which order I do it. So I'm gonna do a loop that says start at 2. So I'm gonna do for int I equals 2. I is less than or equal to x. I need to get x multiplied in there as well. I plus plus. So this is going to be the factorial value for my x factorial. So I'm going to write this and I'm going to try and shrink my code a little bit. So I'm going to have a thing called product. So my product's going to start at 1. because I'm going to do the multiplication here. All right, so now I'm going to do product is equal to my product times I. So this is going to get me the factorial all the way up to the value. So this is the, what would it be, the numerator in my quotient here in my division. Okay, so that gives me the top. Let's do the bottom now. Int, what would it be, numerator, denominator? Call it denominator here. And my denominator, I want to sort of be x minus n factorial. All right. It's a little bit of restraints. They don't give us the constraints on here, but I'm going to assume that x is always going to be greater than n, so you'll never get x minus n, you get 0 in the denominator. All right, so our denominator, we got x minus n, and then I can do a similar for loop here, like that, and I'm going to go up to my denominator. Some bad naming here in my variables, but you know what? I'm gonna rename this to n prime. Again, naming variables is one of the hardest things you can do in programming. All right, and then my denominator, I started out at 1, and then we're gonna do this loop. And my denominator is going to be my denominator times I. This is going to get me my my factorial on the top and the factorial on the bottom. And then final, I'm going to calculate my solution. It's going to be prod divided by denominator. And we're in integer land, so this is probably not going to be exactly what they're looking for. But let's have a look here. Console.writeLine solution. And I'm realizing that there's some mathematical properties that sort of let me cancel some things out here. But we'll get into that in a minute. Let's see if my test cases are right. All right, test 1 passes. Test 2 passes. So this is a far from optimal solution. I have a solution. Ooh, not quite. I expected this big number, so I need to be able to handle numbers that are outside of the integer range. Clever little thing here. Let's see if I switch these to longs. So the long data type gives me much bigger numbers, but they use up more space. So my range of numbers is much, much larger. All right, so my goal here is let me get my test passing, and then I'm going to try and optimize. So some of you watching might already be seeing that, hey, there's some solutions here that are more efficient, better than this. So let's take a look here what I got going on. All right, so I have them all. I could submit now. I pass all the tests, but let's optimize here. I don't really need my x and n to be longs. I don't think I'm going to get giant inputs, but my outputs sort of need to be that way. There's this interesting property with this division here, where so let's look at this thing. So let's say I have x is equal to, let's do a different one. Let's do x equal to 8, n is equal to 7. So this is actually 8 times 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1 divided by, this was a bad example, 1, because we got 7 here. Let me instead go with n is equal to 1. Okay, n is equal to 1. In this case, x minus n, 8 minus 1 is 7. All right, so in this case, we end up with 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. And for some of us math nerds out there, you'll notice that we have this sort of common factors in the numerator and denominator. So we actually can just cancel those out. Those get canceled out in the math. And so really, we could just return 8 in this situation. What about if I had 2 here? It becomes 6. So if I had 2 here, get 6. All right. So then I end up with just 8 times 7. So like I can really reduce my complexity here. So there's this interesting thing we can do with this loop where I say, okay, well, whatever my n is, I only have to do everything above that sorry, my x minus my n, 6. Everything below that sort of gets factored out. So let's see if we can write the code to do that. So I'm going to start my I at x. Okay, so in this case, it would start at like 8. And I want to say, well, I'm greater than my n, my x minus n. Okay, so while I'm greater than my x minus n, we can go ahead and reduce this by 1. And then I don't have to calculate the factorial for the second part, so I can actually get rid of this. I'm watching my clock here, 5 minutes. And so I'm actually going to end up over here, and I'm just going to rename my thing here to solution rather than product. And then let's see if we pass. Let's see if I broke anything. Okay, first test pass. Second test, here we go. All right, so quite a bit more efficient as far as like the amount of calculations we're doing, because we were able to apply some logic to our our properties here, where we know that we can factor the top half out. Okay. All right, and then I'm not a big fan of code golfing. So code golfing, in golf, you want your score to be as low as possible. So shortest code is something we call code golfing, where we're trying to get our code as small as possible. And this is in my opinion, a really silly thing to do, because typically it makes your code less readable. And so I'll show you what that means. So I think this would be a solution that I would be really happy with. But let's go ahead and try and do a little bit of code golfing here in the 3 minutes we have left. I'm going to copy this to my clipboard so I can submit it just in case. I'm pretty sure I don't need any of these imports. The system one is the only one I need, actually. Yeah, so code golf, already reduced a bunch there. Let's make sure our test cases continue to pass. Okay, well, that's going on. I don't need this comment. I don't need these comments. I don't need this space here. So these are why it's like kind of these silly things. I could probably do something with my parsing here, but I'm not super worried about it. A simple thing I can do is make my variable shorter. I hate this. I totally hate doing that. So now I'm down to 320. I really am just not a fan of code golfing here, because look how much worse my code is to read. Instead of a right line, I could probably do a right. Let's see if the solutions will be accepted in that case. Yeah, so I can do just a right. So I got a couple out there. Technically, I can get rid of these curly braces here, and I hate that. That's in my opinion, that's one of my biggest peeves in coding. It's getting rid of that. Yeah, so I think I'm gonna stop there, because I'm just not I personally am not a fan of code golf. I am a fan of trying to make your code more readable. So if you have like a big complex chunk code, it's good to reduce it and make it more concise. But code golfing, just not a huge fan. And C# really doesn't lend itself to code golfing. Other languages, like you can see over here, these other people have submitted their solutions. In Ruby and Python, 73 characters, 64. If I really wanted to get crazy, I could start getting rid of all my white space. Oh, I hate doing this. This is just like making me uncomfortable. This make everyone else uncomfortable? I hope so. It's horrible. Oh, this makes me feel dirty. And then of course I'm gonna end up breaking it when you do this. Look how awful this looks if I get rid of all of this space. Don't do this. Code golfing is for schmucks, which makes me a schmuck right now. I can't get rid of that one, but I can get rid of these. That one. I hate this. It's making me sick. All right. All right, we got down to 191. Silly, in a silly way. Let's never do that again. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and click submit here. Hopefully this didn't break any of them in my last 30 seconds. So normally, like I said, you have, okay, it did go through. All right, so one of the other things I really like about it is we can go and after you do a submission, you can go and you can look at other people's solutions, which can be really helpful for you to learn code. Be like, wow, how did someone get it down to 64 characters? And again, it's in the Ruby language, which is a much more concise. But look how hard this is to read. Look how hard that code is to read. I'm just not a fan of code golfing for this reason. Clever, can be fun, but please don't ever like publish code like that. I'll share my code. All right. I hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to try and do one of these more often. Have a beautiful day.